I'll give you $2 for that guy's ears if you'll cut 'em off.
$2? Why, that's a buccaneer.
The views expressed here are the opinions of the author and do not necessarily reflect those of the FAA, YouTube, or anyone else in their right mind. They should be viewed as knowledgeable opinion only. This discussion applies to U.S. registry aircraft. Requirements and procedures may differ somewhat in other countries. What's a type certificate? We hear a lot about type certificates. Boeing is said to want to certificate the 737 MAX under the same type certificate as other 737s, despite significant differences. What's a type certificate anyway, and how do you get one? This is what a type certificate looks like. It tells the organization to which it was issued, the aircraft models to which it applies, the date of application, and the date of issuance. It doesn't tell you much about the airplane itself. This could have been anything from a Piper Cub to an airliner. Why? The type certificate is based on an accompanying type certificate data sheet, or TCD. That document can be much longer. Here's the type certificate for a Boeing 737. It's 47 pages long. The document might more accurately be called a specification for an aircraft. Suppose you want to create a new aircraft. You know the general nature of the aircraft, so you write a specification of what the aircraft is to do and its general characteristics. You make your specification comply with the Federal Aviation Regulation, or FAR, that applies to the type of aircraft it is to be. In this case, the FAR for an airliner is Part 25. If it were a small personal aircraft, you would need your specification to comply with FAR 23. FAR 25 and FAR 23 are not little bitty documents. FAR 25, for example, is 240 pages long. Your TCD may show choices of things which may be installed, such as different engine types. If you have different versions of the aircraft, the TCD will show the equipment and performance for each version. How do we implement it? Once the initial or draft version of the TCD is complete, it's time to try to implement it. Engineering is created which is believed to implement the aircraft described in the TCD. Each element of the design, such as a wing, is fabricated and validated separately. Assuming they work, they are assembled and the aircraft as a whole is validated. There are two ways to validate. The most obvious way is physical test. Another way is to analyze. Boeing has favored physical testing. Airbus has often favored analysis. Opponents of analysis may state that this is doing nothing but repeating the process which was accomplished when the design was done. That is, it's not an independent validation of aircraft performance. Who decides if a subsystem or assembly meets the test? The FAA authorizes individuals called Designated Engineering Representatives, or DERs, to approve aircraft tests and data. These individuals are not FAA employees, but speak with the authority of the FAA. They may be independent contractors, but often they are employees of the aircraft manufacturer. DERs are typically limited to approving specific types of data rather than having blanket authority. An aircraft is really a collection of approved subsystems and assemblies. They may be drawn from approvals on other aircraft or designed specifically for this aircraft. Is this reasonable? Tests and data can also be approved by the FAA. However, it would require a major increase in the number of FAA. Is this reasonable? Tests and data can also be approved by the FAA. However, it would require a major increase in the number of FAA personnel and delay the approval process substantially. It may be best to reserve FAA personnel for critical approval areas, such as final test or critical subsystems. Some things are not going to work as intended. It's time for modification and retesting. It may be that some parts of the draft TCD cannot be met, or cannot be met at a reasonable price. In these instances, revision of the draft's TCD must be made. Once everything has been satisfactorily validated, the draft TCD is approved by the FAA and becomes the TCD for that aircraft or family of aircraft. A type certificate is then issued to match the TCD. The FAA will release the type certificate and the TCD to the public. The engineering package which implements the TCD will be sealed and is not released to the public. It is the property of the aircraft manufacturer. And that's the story of the type certificate. If the manufacturer decides to produce a variant of that model of aircraft, they may elect to try to modify the existing type certificate for the new model. The type certificate for the Boeing 737 covers more than 10 different variants. Has anyone else done this? Yes, the Piper Cherokee family, described on TCD, or rather type certificate 2A13, covers 18 versions of the Piper PA-28 family. Is there a better way to do this? Maybe, but this is a tried and proven approach. It works when the aircraft manufacturer doesn't get too greedy. Here's the type certificate data sheet